The most common forms of gender-based violence in South Asia are very similar to those worldwide. In fact, the numbers are very similar. Approximately 30% of women, or 1 in 3 women, experiences some form of gender-based violence during her lifetime. The majority of that violence is perpetrated by people that the woman knows, either family members or partners, and most often it takes place within the home. So, and this is true worldwide, that the most dangerous place for women is in her own kitchen. So the manifestation of violence overall in South Asia is very similar to what we see in the rest of the world. But there are some specific forms of gender-based violence that we see in South Asia that are not as common in other parts of the world. So here you might see the whole range of forms of violence that are related to the caste system. Women of lower castes are subject to more violence by people from upper castes, including those who are working within the home. They may be beaten or abused by their employers. You also see sexual violence that's perpetrated by so-called higher caste boys and men on women of lower castes. So there's the multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination that women from the so-called lower castes experience here in India. You also see a range of forms of violence that are related to women's status, which again, worldwide, because of the patriarchal nature of humanity, women are lower status in all parts of the world. But in India, you see the form in which girls are considered to be a burden on their birth family. And so, in the first place, many of the female fetuses are actually eliminated before they're born using new now technology that's available. And we see this practice is actually on the rise, even among educated or more middle class populations. So it's not just a question of people not having access to the information about gender equality or about the importance of girls' education. The decision is still made to choose sons over daughters across the classes in India. So it's a very deep concern of ours. And one of the components of that reason, the reasoning of the families is to eliminate a female fetus is a financial consideration. Because of the current structure of the society and gender relationships within the society, girls are considered a financial burden. Because first of all, the girl is considered, someone that will leave the family home and go to the husband's home. So all of the investments that the family might make in the girl in terms of her education or other forms of, feeding and clothing her, they would consider an investment that's going to be lost because they will lose her to the other family, where she will then become the daughter-in-law and contribute to the maintenance of the household in the other family. And second, a dowry is expected. And oftentimes these dowries are inordinately expensive and burdensome on the family of the girl who's getting married. Sometimes the boy's family will ask for a motorcycle or a washing machine, sometimes even a car, depending on the nature, the level of the couple that's getting married. But it's always a financial burden for the family of the girl. And many families decide that they can't manage those financial burdens, and so they choose a son who they will consider to be always within the family home. He'll be contributing to the family income and family maintenance, and in the end, it's a better financial decision. So we see, that rationale underlying the discrimination against females. Since the gang rape in December of 2012, there was, as you know, a hue and cry, a large-scale mobilization of civil society in response to that particular rape, but also in response to impunity for the law and the widespread nature of sexual violence, and the fact that the conviction rates are very, very low of the perpetrators. So in response to the really, vibrant mobilization of civil society, the government of India formed a committee, and that committee in record time sent back recommendations for new laws. So at that time in the spring of 2013, new laws were implemented to prevent domestic violence, also to prevent sexual harassment in the workplace, and also to prevent, to include more preventive measures, education, and more training for members of the judiciary and the police. So all of those were very progressive, and it was also redefined violence against women to include voyeurism, stalking. Marital rape is still not included in the law, that's one of the gaps, but in many ways it was very progressive legislation in the way that violence against women was defined in a much larger way, and also taking into account a whole array of preventive measures that need to be taken, as well as redressal. Unfortunately, the implementation of that law has certainly not been as promising as the turnaround time in producing such a strong public response. So we still haven't seen conviction rates to increase. We haven't seen any decrease in cases or incidents of violence against women. If anything, the reports have increased. We do believe that the increase in reporting is due to greater public awareness, and also the fact that now more women and girls are willing to come forward and perhaps have even more confidence that the criminal justice system may assist them. There was always a great deal of stigma and shame attached to women who were victims of abuse or survivors of violence, and that still continues, but women are overcoming that, and families also are supporting young women and girls to come forward. So that's a big step forward, but we still haven't seen the response from either the criminal justice system or even from the public at large to create a culture in which violence against women is not okay. So that's why UN Women has come forward with large public education campaigns like He for She, where we ask men to come forward and stand up for women and to end violence against women. We've found around the world as UN Women that even in the countries where legal and policy frameworks are in place, that they're not being properly implemented, and that there might be progress that's made in terms of reporting, in terms of conviction rates, but nevertheless the incidence of violence continues unabated. So we've looked really deeply, into the approaches and strategies that have been tried so far. And we found that we really need to address this problem in a different way. Continue to work on legal reform, continue to work on policies, continue to reform the criminal justice system, but much more needs to be done at the level of education, changing the culture, changing behaviors and practices, and doing that not through just legal and policy work, but doing it through the mass media, through popular culture, through social communications and social media, engaging figures like Emma Watson or like Farhan Akhtar, people that will draw the attention of young people everywhere in the world and create a new momentum for equality and empowerment for women, then that will eliminate the same kinds of attitudes and behaviors that this is normal, that violence against women is just the way it's always been and the way it's always going to be. So we're really trying to explore new avenues for changing mindsets and really coming up with a game changer. So our executive director says we want to see violence against women ended by 2030, and we believe that engaging men and boys, also engaging religious leaders, and engaging the kinds of actors like the private sector and educators that have not been involved in this struggle in the past, to bring all of those different sectors of society together around the importance of women's empowerment, gender equality, and especially saying no to violence against women, not being bystanders wherever we see it. So this is the new message: bystanders no more, stand up, man up. In some parts of the world we're using the slogan man up, he for she. These are all ways of reaching out to new communities to encourage the changes in mindsets and cultural practices and standards that have been around since eternity. So we don't expect this is going to happen overnight, but we have a great deal of hope that in the same way that cigarette smoking and littering were reduced so significantly by mass public education campaigns, we're hoping that we can have that same kind of an impact.